Okay, so I would like to continue my timeline, my story from where I last left off, which was from the mountain town that was a mining town, tiny little mining town, where I had experienced plethora of attacks in a gang stalking way, where the whole town gang stalked me and eventually turned against me because I started to figure out what they were doing and what they were up to. And they never want you to understand what they're doing. No, 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 no. And so that's where it goes from being gang stalked to potentially human trafficked. And this is where shit got real for a minute when I was back in that moment, because when you don't understand what's happening and it's happening to you for the first time, it's scary as shit, you guys. And anybody who knows, if you know, you know, right? But once you get it and understand it and learn that you just, again, just it's all about rising above that vibration. And I'll say this over and over again, because once I really did learn that, it was a game changer for me. So we like I'd mentioned before, I left that town, this mountain, this mining town in the mountains, to go to, and I will reference this as another tiny little mountain town, but we're going to call this one the Casino Mountain Town. I had actually lived in this town, I guess, let me think, about 7 years earlier from that moment. And the only reason I ended up going back to that town, because this town actually was the town where I'm pretty sure all the revenge started. Because I have yet to speak about the original guy that conned me and was part of this whole thing prior to the first con man that you heard about in 2017. I actually have a pre-story that dates back to 2012 that I'll talk about at some point. But just to get this big part out, I wanted to, this part is the part that I need to speak on right now. So I'm moving back to this town, which is funny because I never thought I'd do that, considering what I did deal with that person, that enacted a revenge plot on me, which was the progression of everything that you are hearing about right now, and got a lot of people involved. And this is how I learned that they were all connected. So like I had mentioned, I go back to this particular town because there was one person that I thought I could go to for help, because I was at the time, I was very functional. I was still working. So I was, even though I was dealing with so much shit that people don't typically deal with in their lives, I still was managing to work through the fear and go to work and make money and, live. But I was at a place where they were nickel and diming me at this point, because that's what they try to do to you when they want to get you to a place where they want to human traffic you. They want you in a place so vulnerable where, like, you have, like, if you're not to say people that are human trafficked are weak, but they're trying to put you in a weak state so that, in a sense, they can try to save you. Kind of. That's not really what it's not at all what they're doing, but that's how they would, I'm assuming, try to present that to you. Luckily for me, it never got to that, because I was never going to go that route. No, 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 no. And that's what pissed them off, is because they could not get me. So, but yeah, so it was one night, I packed everything up, and I remembered this one person that worked in this town, and he was a hotel casino manager. So at the time, I thought he was somebody I could trust. I had only known him a couple of months, but that's the only connection I had left. One of my other connections that I still had left was somebody that lived in Hawaii. And this was what actually made me make this decision, is because I knew that they had just either bribed him to disconnect from me, harass, threaten, whatever it was, and or they had somebody speak on his behalf, basically impersonate him to basically tell me like, you fucking suck, I want nothing to do with you. And that is another tactic that they will do once they tap into your phone. They can have the free reign on your calls that come in, calls that go out, and so forth. And that's another video that I'll do at some point, is talking about all the different ways that they can track you and just mess with your life so, okay. So that's where I go back and I show up on this, at this guy's door. At the time, the thought was, I do want to try to leave the state, because I mentioned this in earlier videos that I was getting threat after threat after threat. Leave this state. They would say the specific state, but I'd get photos on my phone in my, photo space where it would say, get the F out of this state, and label the state I was in. Obviously, I'm not taking photos like that and putting them in my own. So that I did want to go, but I had to stay and finish the probation from that fraudulent charge that I had to take the rap on, that I didn't do, but that I was set up on, and again was one of 5 charges that they tried to pin on me, because again, they had all my information and they were impersonating me, and they had already started selling my information to people, and they were using it. And this is another thing they'll do, is they're selling them to criminal people. So they're doing criminal activities under your name and information and social security number and date of birth. So if they get caught in something, but let's say they're not physically caught yet, who are they going to go back to first? The name. So like I mentioned, there were 5 times I was only able to not get one dismissed, because it was that hard for me to be able to prove otherwise without having to go into a jury. And that scared me, because that's our system is, if you know what I'm saying. So I didn't trust them, because it was basically a 50-50. And I had learned that these people are really good at making them look one way and you look another, when it's not true. So I didn't want to put that up in their hands. And then the option was to just take this plea deal, which, like I had mentioned, this would have taken this particular felony fraud charge off my record, which I was so stoked about, because as a person who is against like stealing and all that kind of stuff, this was the worst charge for so many different reasons, obviously, that you could have on your record. But for somebody that doesn't believe in that, it was just disgusting. And they knew it was a slap in the face for me to have something like that, like, ha, And so the reason I'm talking about that is because I had to stay in the state until I had completed the probation, that I was doing perfectly fine. And I was on track. My probation officer was, loving all the work. In fact, she took me. I didn't have to do some of the requirements, as long as they had originally wanted me to. She was, constantly saying, you're doing such a good job that we're going to, you don't have to do that and this and so forth. But what I had left is I had to I only had like $127 of my fine left to pay. And I had minimal, just a small amount of, they're the angels, they're with us, a small amount of community service hours I had to complete. So the goal was to, go back into this town, and this town being a casino town, I have tons of experience with hotels and serving and bartending and all this kind of stuff throughout my career as corporate. And then when I went, and then just had a bunch of, years and years, decades of, service industry experience. And this town had a lot of opportunity for jobs in that sense. So had told this person, like, if you could just give me a couple of weeks, I know I can get a job right away. And if you don't mind, like, me staying with you for a couple of weeks. Little did I know I was moving in with the enemy. Just kept happening over and over again. And whether or not he was an initial enemy that was sent in to befriend me a couple months previous, or if he became one after knowing me in the way that most of the people that knew me to support me got bribed, harassed, or threatened to not support me, whatever, something happened. Because, yeah, he was all about it, and he was super sweet and super kind about it. I was like, yep, come on in. And I was at the very end of my addiction moments, because this was, I was in fear state. I didn't trust anybody. I was so, like... it was because when you're being watched and stalked and people are literally doing that to you, of course, like, if that happened, like, people talk about, oh, if my home got broken into and now I feel so invaded. Yeah, imagine what that's like when you have somebody doing this to you every day. That it's an invasion of privacy is what that, and it's gross. It feels sick. And so I had been kind of trying to, use that time, like, okay, well, I want to try to, lessen up on stuff and, not drink as much. And I was trying, and I did start to feel safer. And so much to the fact where I went out. So, a couple of days there, I go out and I start applying for jobs. I ended up getting this, what's it called? Basically, a floor manager at a casino. I got the job. Was so excited. And that day, with a little amount of money I still had left, because that's what you do when you're still in addiction mode, is I went out to go celebrate and to go gamble for a minute. Because for me, I grew up in a gambling family where my dad would fight so hard at my mom for all the money that she'd lose gambling. And watching the rest of the family, like, just blow through loads of money. I had one family member, that, she went into bankruptcy. She took her whole family into bankruptcy because of her hardcore gambling addictions. So it was something that when I would do it, it was kind of, a way to, again, numb out and kind of not think about things. But I definitely didn't do it at that level. And so for me, this was a celebratory, like, let's go. And, because I was feeling like the positive energy, like feeling like I could win today and go have a couple of drinks. I was supposed to start this job the next day, right? I was excited because all I needed to do, the goal was to just work this job long enough to get, enough money saved for myself to move out of the state, as well as to pay off my fine that I still owed. And then I'd have this time to complete these community service hours and end my probation to get that fake charge off my record. That was the goal. Because that was the whole point of why I took that plea bargain, was because this fake charge would then be dropped off my record. And that was the goal. So that night, or that day after I get the job, weirdly enough, who do I see as I am, first of all, going to that appointment? As I'm coming out of my vehicle at the time in the parking garage, heading over to the interview, I end up seeing the original stalker con man, who I'm pretty sure is a draconian. If you know what I mean, you'll know. I have more writing about that in my journal. But I see him. He apparently got another job up there, which was really interesting that we run into each other because we had not seen each other since I was down the bottom or down the mountain where all the initial stuff with the con man that I spoke about in the videos like 4 or 5 ago now about him, and realized that they were connected. And yeah, it was a little awkward for sure. But, now looking back on it, I just think about his creepy way that he was talking to me. And it's like, now I know, like he was watching me, that he was reporting back, and so he had potentially maybe even gotten a job up there himself, knowing I was going there, because I hadn't realized my vehicle had been tracked yet at that point. So again, this is how they know where you are and then just show up where you are. And so I go to my interview, and I am so excited because I got this job. And so I go out to celebrate by myself, and I started winning. I was like up a couple $100 and was like, okay, I'm good. No, I'm just going to go have a couple of beers and I'll go back home and get ready for work the next day. Well, I end up running into somebody I had not seen in a long time. And now I know that this was somebody that they sent in to distract me. And at the time I'm thinking, oh, cool, because obviously I had just been in a space where, I don't have anybody. They had literally pushed everybody out of my life. I had no support, no help. And it felt really nice. It feels nice when you're in those moments to think that you have somebody that you can trust and speak to. You think you can trust, right? So that night, we end up drinking for a long time, much longer than I was planning to. But yeah, I was having a good time with him and thought, I deserve this. This is what, kind of, I guess, where my head was. And, nobody was getting hurt in the process, so who cares? And then all of a sudden, it's dark. Because I started this, kind of because the interview was early. I probably started drinking and then gambling, early to late afternoon. So it was daylight. And so now it's dark. And we were actually getting kind of, at this point now, where it's kind of getting close to bar close time. All of a sudden, my friend is nowhere to be seen. Didn't tell me that he was going anywhere. And then all of a sudden, these people started creeping. I was a smoker back then. And so I went outside to go smoke as I'm kind of looking for him. And all of a sudden I noticed people are, kind of creeping in the background. And I know what that meant. So I try to just walk to the next casino because I'm like, where the hell's dude? And they're like, well, this bar is going to close anyways, and I was like, okay, well, I guess I don't know where he went. And so I walk over quickly because I quickly realized they were indeed following me. And it was a couple people. I did not recognize them. And it was obvious that they were following me. And that's a tactic, they want to scare you. They want you to be in fear mode because then you're not making rational decisions, right? So I walk into the next casino, the original casino where I parked my vehicle, because I kept thinking first I thought I want to go in, but see, I had started crying at this point because this just re-triggered all the trauma that I experienced, that I had been experiencing for, about a year at this point, but especially those last 8 months were so intense in that mining town that it triggered. And so I started to get a panic attack, and which rightfully so. And so I thought the intention was to go into the casino to be safe and around people and, where there's cops and whatnot. But what they don't like to see is people all upset in the casino. And I knew this from having worked in these spaces earlier, years previous. And so I thought, well, I can't go in until I can get myself cleaned up. So first I sat outside and, I was out of cigarettes at the time, but there were a couple people outside smoking. And so I had asked, like, can I borrow a cigarette? And, can I hang out with you guys and kind of say, listen, I think I'm being followed. If you guys could just chill here with me for a minute, that would be great. And sure enough, the whole time that they were out there, nobody shows up. But as soon as they go back up into the casino, because they had asked, well, do you want to come up with me? And I said, I'm still feeling like a little, like I feel like I just need to clean up a bit. But yeah, I'm not trying to hold you guys here. No worries. Like, I think we're, everything, I'm assuming maybe they've left. They go back into the casino, and then what happens is they're back. And I see them. So, but I see them, they don't see me that I'm aware of. So my thought, I was not trying to drive. But what I thought I could do is just go sit in my vehicle and hide there until they were gone and then go up into the casino. Well, they walked for what seemed like hours, but even like 10, 15, 20 minutes is a long time, when you're hoping somebody's going to get the hell away from you and stop following you, because you don't know what they're going to do. You don't know if they're trying to kidnap you, kill you. Who knows? Like, this level of person is, you can't ever assume you know what their plans are for you. So they were there and they just wouldn't leave. And they just kept circling the garage. And all of a sudden I'm like, they're never going to fucking leave. So I make a decision, because that casino was here, and then there was a road, and then there was another casino almost right across the street. All I would have had to do was just drive out, just go down like maybe 50 feet, and then turn into the next parking garage of the next casino. And the reason I had wanted to do that was because I thought, first of all, it would get me away from those people, and that would, because obviously they weren't going to try to leave in that scenario. And knowing that they were there was, I couldn't get myself under composure at the time, which, like I had mentioned, I didn't want to go into the casino being not composed, because that calls attention to you, and they don't like that. The casino officers don't like that. And then they try to give you a hard time. So again, I was not trying to drive it. So choose to make this decision to just drive across the street. And the minute I am at the entrance or the exit of the parking garage, and I can see that casino, it's just right there, there's a cop. That's right, sitting literally right there at the entrance exit. And they never would sit there. So I knew that this was a setup. I still take accountability for, being behind the wheel, and because this is where the DUI happens for me. And this is the whole point of why I'm telling this part of the story. But because what had happened is once I saw him, at the time I had a gas, and I didn't know, a broken tail light. And that was their end to, pull me over. And then they tried to make up like that I was swerving. And I was like, I wasn't even going fast enough. And then they even said that, like, yeah, you were only going because the speed limit was 15 miles an hour in this, slow road. And they said, like, you were only going 10. And I'm like, well, the speed limit was 15, but it is what it is. And so, and I'm nervous because I'm like, again, on probation for something previous, and that if I had gotten another ticket or another charge while still trying to complete a probation charge for, again, this situation that I was not part of but set up on, it not only would give me the charge of what I'm getting charged for, but it would take away all that work I had done, all the probation time, and I'd have to start it over. And the worst part is, this time they would not take it off my record. And that was the part that sucked, because I really was hoping for that. Because it's one thing if I did that charge, take accountability of it, but I didn't. So that was shitty for me. And I just started bawling and I got so nervous. And yeah, they pulled me over and I mean, I'm having a panic attack while the cop was trying to talk to me. I literally pulled up in front of the casino and they pulled up behind me. And so this is where I get arrested for a DUI. And I had previous DUIs. So not only was it shitty for the fact that it was gonna, mess up the current probation that I was on, that I potentially was going to get into some big trouble because the amount of DUIs I had at that time was going to potentially take me from misdemeanor into felony level. And even though my last DUI at that time was 10 years previous. So I get taken into jail that night. The next day I'm supposed to start my new job. I'm in jail for 49 days before I'm released. And I'm going to get into this a little bit because, first of all, one of the things that I said, the only thing that I was not happy about being in there being in jail was the fact that I love my cats were my kids. So I was so scared at what was going on. Like with the person that, that I was staying with, they were staying with, that he'd be able to, help me. And, it was a matter of trying to get in contact with him while in jail to be like, hey man, can you help me take care of them until, I figure out what's going on here and get out. And, that was scary because he said he was going to be helpful. And then it turned out, and this is where I learned in jail is that he actually was or became part of the group that was gang stalking me. And so every day, once I figured that out, I was so scared for my cats, just like, what is he doing to them? But besides that, had I not had to worry about that, I was actually so happy that I was there in jail around all these cops, because for the first time in about a year, I felt safe and protected. No shit. And the first couple of days, I just slept so hard because I couldn't sleep, when you're realizing that you're being attacked at all times of the day, every day. And when you're in fear state and survival mode, yeah, your body is alert and, ready to, be aware of what noise is that, and this and that. So loved it. Now, there's a lot of parts that happen here. Number one, as an empath and a highly sensitive person and a person that is not of criminal mind, you don't do well in jails with the criminally insane or the criminally karmic, or because they're all basically narcissistic psychopaths for the most part that got busted. And they definitely don't like you. Your light shines way too fucking bright, and they think that you're just, because your light is shining on their shadows. So they're in a constant state of wanting to start war after war with you. So yeah, so 49 days, the reason it was 49 days instead of me being able to get out right away was because, again, going back to when I first came back into the state, and I discussed this in earlier timeline videos, the guy that set the revenge plan on me and set me up on the felony fraud charge, that happened, and I did not know about it for 5 years. So in the court's eyes, they thought I was avoiding the charge and running, when in reality, I didn't even know this charge existed. So because of that from years ago, which again, I was actually still trying to take care of this, I was in process, I was almost done. This was the end of it being almost done now. And that they thought I was going to be a runner if they set my bail at a rate where I could have gotten out or had somebody help me. Granted, I didn't have anybody to help me at the time. And would I have, I mean, if the bail was low enough, and it shouldn't have been that high, it should have been potentially, I should have been able to just get out on what they call a bail bond. But, and if you know the criminal system, but again, because they thought I was a potential runner, they put my bail really high. And I mean, I reached out to people that I thought could maybe help me that I hadn't spoken to in a while, and we're just like, no, I can't do that, So was forced to stay there for 49 days. But like I mentioned, that was the one thing I was always really happy about was they can't hurt me in here. And hopefully by the time I get out, which I didn't know I was going to be there for 49, it was interesting because it was court date after court date after court date. And like, I ended up having to have a couple of different lawyers come into play that at first they weren't doing what they were supposed to, and they weren't saying the correct information. And that's another thing you need to know is that there's dirty judges and there's dirty lawyers. And if they can get their hands on any of them, they will turn your judge or your lawyer against you. And then now they're working against you instead of for you. That exists. And I didn't know this at the time, but I look back on the things that happened and now know it. And I actually do have a better story about that moving forward. But so what happened is so I take this time where, first of all, I ended up having to get to request to put myself in isolation away from the general public of females that I was around, because they kept wanting to start fights with me and getting me in trouble with the guards. And if anybody has ever been in jail, they don't trust anybody. They just assume you're all the same level, which is super stupid and annoying, but it is what it is. So, I'd try to learn to just kind of stay to myself as much as possible. But, it gets a little lonely. And if you do get a chance to try to talk to somebody, and again, sometimes there would be another just normal, nice person that would come in and you'd be able to talk with them, and they would, pair, they start to learn that, okay, well, let's pair this person up with this person. They're a little bit more at the same level. So I would get opportunities to did you come to say hi to everybody? You wanted to have a debut, you cutie. She's one of my babies. Anyways, there was I think, you can kind of see the other one. She's over here on the couch too. She's hanging out with us too. Okay. Let's see here. We're at 3303. Lots of threes. And so if you've been seeing lots of threes, confirmation that this video is meant for you. And so let me think here. Sorry, I kind of lost train of thought. Let me pause to remember. Okay, I remember. So yeah, I was requesting to be in isolation, and then at times they tried to put me back into general population, which at this particular jail I was in, it was awesome because it wasn't like typical jails where there's tons of women. Thankfully, it was minimal. Like at most in this stage, I think they had like 6 to 8 of us in what they call pods at a time, but down to as little as down to 2. There's a couple of us at certain times. And, you'd get out, you'd get time to go, work out and go to the library, which the library also had, places or a TV so you could watch movies if you wanted to go and do that. And you take advantage of anything and everything because all you got is time, right? But you do a lot of writing and a lot of reading. And this is where my sobriety really started, was that day I got arrested, as well as my dedication about making sure that this was going to happen. Granted, there was going to be probation that was going to also encourage that by making it happen. But consciously myself was like, Yeah, I definitely see that the drinking is creating issues. I think we need to consider that this won't be something I get to keep into my life while I try to heal on all levels. Because if you remember in some of my first videos of my timeline videos, I'm thinking I can heal and be a drinker still. Because when you grow up in um, a family of addicts and alcoholics and mentally ill people with so many diseases and things like that, just very unhealthy and dysfunctional and toxic. 5 o'clock, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. This was philosophy for us back then. And so I just didn't think that I ever had to stop drinking, that I was just gonna, learn how to do it, that I'd be able to just go back to doing it without the fear, and at a more, balanced level. Well, this was an entrance point for all the attacks, the spiritual attacks that were happening that I had yet to understand. So this moment was that moment where I said, okay, I'm going to use this time to my advantage. And I'm going to read any book that calls out to me, we're going to read it. I was able to have some books sent, so I was able to read a beautiful book about a girl that was human trafficked. And at the time, I was not seeing at that time I was understanding, like, wow, there's a lot of similarities, and this helped me then to even identify that more. That was potentially something that they were trying to consider and do with me, and pull me into. But also understanding that, once you know information, you also are a target to just be taken off this planet, so that you're not somebody who can continue to give information that could potentially get them in trouble or busted, right? So, I mean, I had a really good routine daily where, meditate, pray every day, mantras, affirmations, and really started working out daily. Was because up until this point I had actually stopped working out after the after my arm broke in that car accident that he tried to kill me in. I my muscles in my arms were weak for so long, and then it went from, once I was able to start using my arm and my muscles again in a more regular way, I just, being in fear state and survival mode, you're running, you're moving, and any spare time you have, well, I guess this is how I handled it. I guess working out would have been the healthier thing to do. Drink, and try to numb out. So um, this was the first time that I, was like, okay, let's, I have experience in, working out and being a aerobics instructor. I've helped lots of people with their, losing weight and things like that. I know how to properly work out a body. I was a soccer player for 18 years, and I practiced, from 5 years old all the way up into college. So, and I practiced with, men and played on men's teams and things like that. So there was I was trying to, right before moving to that state, I was actually in the process of trying to get my NASM certification for becoming a trainer, and had just finished doing my massage therapy certificate as well. So really started to utilize, working with my chakras and everything. And then one of the cool things I found in that particular jail was the Bhagavad Gita. Game changer. This is what helped me start to understand the spiritual side of things just a little bit. And I loved it so much I wasn't able to finish it during that time period because I had to really take it slow. And at that time I was dealing with lots of anxiety. So it took me, it's hard to read. I'd have to read pages, multiple times when you have anxiety at that level. And, was learning how to relax my anxieties and calm my panic attacks and everything. Was getting my plan of action for when I get out, what I was planning to do, that I really wanted to, try to find a therapist that could help me not just get now through all this, nasty shit I dealt with, but to again dive back into my childhood trauma that I initially was trying to heal from before all this bullshit came into my life. And so what had happened was, I started reading that and oh my God, it was so amazing. Let me just go. Yeah, I'm released and I take a plea deal again about, now I have to redo the original felony fraud charge. I have to do everything over again, but they were going to run them concurrent. Now I have a felony DUI charge. Not proud, but it is what it is, and again, the felony status just means, because I never heard anybody in any of my DUIs, just myself. It's just because of the number of times I had a DUI. And like I had mentioned, I didn't think it was going to be that bad because I had, my previous one was 10 years previous. But because of the felony status, I was facing 2 to 6 years in prison. So a plea deal was definite because I was like, nope, there's no way I want to take a plea deal. So once I got out, this time, because of what happened last time with that charge, even though the DUI was all me, I take accountability of that, even though I was set up, but, still, I was the one that was driving. So, what was I just going to say? Sorry. Hold on one sec. I got to pause. That's right. So, when I get out, one of the things I had learned, because in that mining town in the mountains, this is where they really start messing with my vehicle and we're taking things apart. And this is where I learned where if they would mess with something small, where if you were to catch it right away at like a $5 or $10 fix, or maybe even a free fix, you're good. But if you didn't catch it right away because of just not knowing how to work on cars or not understanding that this sound isn't good or this or that, then this, free or $5, $10 fix turned into, $2,000. And so they would slowly try to nickel and dime you in these types of ways as well. So know that exists. If you're thinking like that your vehicle is breaking down, where you're like, what? This doesn't make sense. Or your bikes or your e-bikes or your mopeds, any form of transportation, they want to make your life harder. So they're going to take that out. They're going to do their best to take it out. And what better way to do it than take the money, the little amount of money that you have and that you're trying to rebuild because of what you lost from them, and put it back into stuff. Now you barely have money to do the things that you're trying to do for yourself. This is, again, more tactics that they do. So, the first job I take, because once I got out of jail, like, I had known that the guy that I had been staying with was bad. It took me a couple of days with him not there, and I had some scary nights. And I realized that he had done some really shitty stuff to my cats while I was gone. I found out that he threw one of my cats down some stairs. And I mean, my cats were freaked out when I got back after, being about a month and a half, going on almost 2 months of not being there for them. First time I'd been gone from them for that long. And who knows what else he was doing. I was afraid he was poisoning them. So my goal was to get the hell out of there as fast as I could. And so I ended up, and again, this was another old friend that comes into play here. Actually, I'm sorry. I find a job at an auto parts store, because my thing is I need to get a job. I had already, 49 days. I lost the job, obviously, in the casino town. No call, no show. I wasn't able to call them and let them know, oh, by the way, I'm in jail. So they ended up, obviously, that job was gone. So I go down the mountain and I decide I want to learn how to work on cars. Well, I didn't. They had the conmen had messed up my credit and my student loans, taken them out of forbearance, and where I'd had them in deferment, and had defaulted them. So I wasn't able to go back to school now, at least through loans, and did not have the money because again they were nickel and diming me. And this is another, because if I can afford to have money to go back to school and better myself, they don't want you to do that, right? So my thought was, I need a job. I want to learn how to work on cars. I don't have the money or the ability to get financially to go back to school to learn, because I was ready to go to become a mechanic because at that time that was the most, the area that I was feeling that I was being under attack at the most. So whenever that moment would happen for me, when I'd realize, okay, this is the area I'm under most attack, I need to learn this area, that's what I would do. I would just dive into it. Hours and hours and hours of studying. But for me, this doesn't come natural. So I thought, well, if I can't go back to school, what's the next best thing? Well, let's go work at a parts store. So I went to a particular parts store and got a job as a counter person, and figured I'd start learning about parts and learning how to work on vehicles that way, and then start picking all the brains of everybody that I was working with. And it was fun. One of the things that they were doing that made it not fun is they would send people in. It was just 4, 5, 5, 5, so 3 5s and a 4 on the clock. And I have been seeing crazy amounts of 3 5s. And if you have, that means amazing change is occurring. And I've been seeing 5s for a long time. I know that the energy is shifting, and that's all I'll say. Confirmation for all of you. So they would start sending people in to mess with me, mess with my mind mentally. I not only, in verbal ways, I was noticing that they would wear these like little cameras on necklaces or in their glasses to, again, get me on video, and even just getting me in scared states. These are videos that they use to mock you, and they make money off of these as well. They're mockery videos that they make. If you know what I'm talking about, if you don't, then just, pass by this video because it's not going to be for you. But so even though I was loving what I was doing, I had to take a pretty big pay cut in order to do this. But for me, it was something that was exciting because I love to learn. Anything I can do to keep learning, let's do it. And this was an area I'd always wanted to know more in. So I thought, well, what better time to do it? And so this was not only a way for me to make money, but to keep me ahead of the game. Now I was able to start noticing things when they would mess with my vehicle, and I could get things fixed before it became a problem. See, so this is how you intercept their way of nickel and diming you. Just one of many ways. Okay. So I get this job, and at the job, I meet this other coworker who says, I have an extra room, you can move in here. So was able to, and I'm thinking it's serendipitous because it happened pretty fast. And again, I think he was kind and a good person when I first met him. Potentially not. This is not 100% that I'm for sure on that. But I thought he was initially, which is why I said, okay, yeah, I'll take this extra room for me and my cats to come stay in. I got to get out of this guy's house who's there were things that were happening where I'd hear things at night. I'd wake up and there would be random knives, like big, like hunting knives, like in the driveway. Like people dropping them either on purpose or if they were running because they saw me, and dropping them by accident. Just weird shit, and again, things to mentally manipulate you and mind control you and put you in fear state. So my goal was to get the hell out of there. Plus I did not trust me to be gone with him there and my cats. So got this job, moved to this next house. And the next thing that happens that I end up finding out is this guy's trying to sleep with me. This is where because the previous guy tried to do it as well. And then when you didn't sleep with them, that's when all of a sudden you staying with them becomes an issue. And that's what happened with this guy. The funny thing was, is he was freaking married. His wife was there in the house. They slept in different bedrooms, which was really weird. And that's why there was probably something else going on there. They were probably just, a couple that was in on this type of, dirty work, because I found a lot of other things that proved that they were definitely part of this criminal underground organization. A lot of like computer hacking tools and things like that. But, and it was weird because he gave me one of his iPhones to use. And this is, again, he was trying to track me. And so he connects me with a lawyer. And see, at this point, I don't know he's bad. So I take this, and this lawyer, I really did not want to have to use a public defender for this particular case, dealing with these 2 charges, both being felonies, and knowing that I was potentially facing a significant amount of time in prison if I didn't have somebody that I could pay to try to help. So I take this guy, and he not only allowed me to hire him at a lower rate than everybody else was, that he would allow me to make payments to him. And this was going to be feasible then for me to be able to hire him. And at first he seemed great until he wasn't. Until he just starts not showing up to my court dates, not coming prepared to my court dates, not having the paperwork filled out for the prosecutor or the judge. And then I'm in court with him, and the judge and the prosecutor are blaming it on me. Like, this is where I start investigating into him a little bit more, which, again, I should have done this right away. But these were the things that I'm telling all of you now that you should do, because these were things I didn't know to do, because this is first time when you're dealing with this stuff and you don't know how to handle this. And so sure enough, I start digging into this guy, and guess what? He had been on he was barred for a minute, or like on their alert list as somebody that was, had done something to a client questionable. And it was instant red flag. And then, because at that point, as I'm finding this information out as well, he almost wanted to start asking for more money. And so there was that. And then he was also trying to say that he hadn't been getting my payments. It started to get weird, where none of this was true. And luckily I was somebody who had kept all my information, so I was able to back it up. But these were just some of the things that were happening. And I finally had my last straw, because he literally was making my case worse for me. Like, he went from going, oh yeah, well, you're not going to have to face any prison time, and we'll be able to, because I had said, I get the fact that they had wanted me to do at least a minimum of 90 days, and I had done 46. So I would do 90 minus 46, which would have been about, another 45, 43 days, whatever. 44, sorry. And then you get less time than that, actually. However, my goal was, I don't want to be gone at all. I want to just do house arrest. Is that feasible? Yeah, sure it is. And as we were going, it was not going to look that way. I mean, the guy was it was obvious he was purposely fucking up my case. So I dig deeper. And what I found is insane. So I reach out to another lawyer and tell her about this. And she's like, oh my God. First of all, yeah. All you need to do is contact him, let him know you know all this stuff, and just say, I expect any monies I've paid to you up to this point to be returned to me in less than 24 hours. And guess what happened? I did exactly that. I was really nervous because nothing up until that point had really worked out. But I had been in a space where I had already started my healing work. Because at this stage now, because there's a little bit missing here, because let me back up. Okay, I ended up moving once and then twice. Okay, so two more times before I'm in my healing space, where I had the most beautiful healing space on the top of a mountain, for 2 years with the most beautiful couple that like literally started giving me faith in humanity again and allowed me to heal and rebuild again. That's all I was needing, was just some space, peace, time to be able to not have people attacking me, just be in my space to be able to do what I needed to do for myself and my girls. And it was just 54:45. Confirmation that you should be watching this for sure. And a mirroring. So I was already in the because this was during COVID time as well. So it was drawn out for a couple of years. Like basically my pretrial was like 2 years before I got before the charge happened. But part of that was, like I had mentioned, that once I realized this, I had to call him on this. I called him on it in the space that I was healing. So at this point, I'm already on my own. Like this was not court ordered at this point because I wanted to start my healing. So I had reached out to my first therapist at the time while all this pretrial stuff is going on, and wanted to get a go on my healing work. On top of that, I'm doing sound therapy and breath work and on my own. And again, this is because this was my job, what I was trying to do this whole time that you're hearing about this story that took place. That was my intention, was to heal, to go to this state, be away from the family that was taking me down so that I could heal from all the trauma that I experienced growing up. And I started the healing process with having to heal from what these con men had done first. So in that process, though, I'm also, like I had mentioned, working on the spiritual things and, doing things like working with crystals, really starting to learn who I am, who my authentic self is. What are my hobbies? What are my passions? Really, learning that I was loving to paint and sing and play instruments and garden and just so many other things that I was not allowed to do growing up because I was told that is worthless and you can't do anything with that stuff. And yeah, you got to do something where you get into a company. And so we're hitting up to about an hour, but I'd like to be able to just finish this off really quick. Okay, so I'm also having the confidence a little bit more because I'm in a safe space. I'm finally starting to decompress from all this survival mode and fear state. Plus, having, good therapists there to help me to identify like, well, yeah, you have complex PTSD, you are somebody who, you have all this childhood stuff, which makes it complex. That's what takes a PTSD into complex is the trauma and the abuse that you had to endure and the neglect that you endured as a child. And then to top it off with what you had to experience in the survival mode here, with these people that were trying to con you, and who else? Gang stalk. What else is what I was trying to say? And so have the balls to be able to call this dirty lawyer out on his shit. And guess what, everybody? Less than 24 hours did I receive all my money back that I had given to him. And so started my job and I'm looking for my next lawyer. Well, now at this point, there was a different public defender, and he had a lot of good, he was new, so he was fresh. He wasn't burnt out. And people were saying that he's good. Like if, I'd just rather do that. So I had a meeting with him and spoke with him, and I did. I felt confident because he was like, yeah, we can easily get you the house arrest if we have any type of, jail time that needs to occur, that we can get it to be house arrest. However, at most, you'll face the 90 days minus this 46 days that you have already served. And so one of the things I always thought about, because I manifested the 90 days because I just wanted to be sure I did not have to do the 2 to 6. There was no way after that first 46 days that was complete and pure hell after a while. Like I say, I felt safe, but yet at the same time, there was a lot of safety that wasn't there. And I had to keep they had to keep isolating me and putting me in my cells on my own because of these women that wanted to continuously fight me for no reason except their own hatred for my light coming, shining on their shadows and their traumas that they didn't want to, face. So yeah, that was an amazing thing, but know that that does exist, people. I mean, going back to the case too, where the con man who was facing his own trial with the vehicular felony assault because of the broken arm and the car crash that happened to me, where he crashed my car, broke my arm in the car crash. And I mean, witnesses went missing, for families didn't even know they were gone. Like, where'd they go? And so just know that it does exist in our criminal system. It's unfortunate, but it exists. Is that people are easily bribed, and especially in like all the way up to the judges, people. And I got to experience that. Because they have ends, but they also bribe, and these groups of people have lots of money because they're making all this money off of our information, off of impersonating us, and having fraudulent things happen to us that they're putting onto us, and then making us take the fall for their crimes. So, let's see here. The last thing that I think I wanted to just quickly cover in this portion was that, so be aware that if you are dealing with anything like this, to be very cautious about the, any lawyers you're working with. If something starts to seem sketchy, call them on it. Because like I said, it was interesting. I mean, it was less than 24 hours and they had my money back to me instantly. Because I was like, I know what you're doing. I know who you're working with. And I will turn you in. And I already see that you already have a warning on the bar. And yeah, I'm not somebody, I'm one of those people they don't want to mess with because I don't give up and I'm a fighter. So I'm like, for these type of people, I'm like their worst target. And it may seem like easy at first, but in reality, I'm their worst. So, okay, so let's see here. Where I wanted to go next was, hold on. Okay, so what happened with that was, like I had mentioned, I had 2 years of pretrial because then once we finally got it, because the other lawyer, the bad lawyer, it was postponing it. Granted, I was also encouraging that for the reasons of the COVID stuff, because I was hoping that, because I was autoimmune at the time, and I was scared at the time when you didn't understand what was happening with all that COVID stuff, and they kept saying that people kept getting sick, and I was afraid as being having like an autoimmune thing going on that I could have died in jail and they wouldn't have cared. So, was really trying to avoid being in jail when it was really contagious. So he was, helping me to postpone for that reason, but also he had his own nefarious reasons he was postponing. And so when I got with the public defender, things went, much more smooth and in my direction. And he was able to get me the 90 days. Now, okay, I'm going to go back to this because I was only manifesting the 90 days. I was like, okay, source, I don't want this 2 to 6, like, at the worst case scenario, 90 days. But if we can get this, house arrest, that's what I want. At no point did I think I'm powerful enough that I can just manifest no punishment in this level at all. Because I do remember because they ended up giving me the 90 days, which meant I ended up having to do another 30 but I ended up doing like 22 because you get good time. I did some work in there, and I ended up only doing, I think, like 22 days. And it was actually kind of cute because the couple that I rented from, she brought me to the jail that day, and her husband made me a cake with a file on it. And I thought that was so cute. But like, seeing that's the kind of love though, like, because they were hilarious people and they were just trying to make me be a little bit more upbeat about it. And which that's what family should be, those two were my family, not my blood family, because my blood family, obviously they wouldn't do anything like that. They just make up lies about you and spread false rumors about you to people and create slander and defamation about you. These people were all about love and help. I mean, literally took me there. And then we're also available for any time I wanted to speak to them, to speak to somebody outside of jail. And, helped me take care of my cats. So I knew that they would be in good hands. Just allowed me to have what I thought was going to be 30 days, but what ended up being 22 days. Again, another time where and I called it this, I was like, this is going to kind of be my vacation. It's a weird way to say this, but where I'm going to go in and I'm going to hard work out. I'm going to hard work on, just work on myself, continue, because I had to put the therapy I was doing on hold. And, all my therapists knew at the time, like, we're going to hold this because I have to do this jail time. And then we're going to go ahead and we'll pick it back up when I come back out. But I'm going to still be doing all that I need to do. I'm going to pick back up the Bhagavad Gita. I'd actually ordered it for myself outside of jail so that I could, try to catch up and read it. And plus, it's a good one to have. And yeah, it was actually a really awesome experience. Again, I dealt with, the women haters that don't like to see a chosen person with light coming in, and they got their karmic issues and I'm shining the light on their issues. So they hate on me. So I had to request many times to get taken back out. But this time there was only like a couple of us in a pod when I was able to get separated, or there were so few women in the jail that they could keep like 2 in one pod, 2 in another. So after the first 14 days of being quarantined by yourself, and really having to be, in a space for like, up to like 22, 23 hours, and then after the quarantine time of the COVID, then you could go and be in general population, which, like I had mentioned, was 3 people at first, but then 1 started a fight. So then they put me back in isolation per my request. And then once this other woman came in, they were able to move us around and they put us together. And then I spent the rest of my time with her, which was great and beautiful. And just would work out every day. And I remember thinking, like, I wanted to be able to start a program in jail to help people, because they don't do anything to rehabilitate you. If you want to rehabilitate yourself, you need to do this. You need to have that motivation. And the majority of people that are in there, they're not trying to do that. They're trying to find drugs in jail. They're trying to find any way to numb out in jail. And they're and then planning what they're going to do outside of jail, whether it's a revenge plot against somebody or, their next fix or whatever. And so, no judgment, that's them. But yeah, I started thinking, like, I really wanted to be able to start a program for people, and somehow, come in with like qigong and yoga and meditation, because I would meditate daily, and I mean, that it actually, weirdly enough, was a really beautiful time that I had there. And it was because I was at the beginning of my healing stage, and I knew that I was going to go home to my girls and go back to this beautiful healing space up in the top of the mountains where I had this 300 and all around view, 360-degree view of, beautiful sunrises and sunsets, had this beautiful support system of this couple that was, my adopted family. And, it was great. And she came to pick me up. The same person who dropped me off on her birthday comes to pick me up, and was all just a bunch of positive, and was just like, you did it. It's behind you now. Don't now you can just continue on, and then that's how it was. And now from this date on, granted, the first 2 weeks, because those first 2 years I was on what was called a ankle monitor. So there was no way for me to try to, even if I wanted to, which I didn't, but there would have been no way for me to try to drink because it monitors you every second. Now, after the jail time, I had 2 weeks without anything. That could have been an opportunity for me to drink. I was over it. I was 2 years sober at that time. And I was now understanding that no, alcohol is, or any of the addictions are avenues in for karmics and low vibrational people to try to enter into your energy space to try to take you down. So realized that's out of my life. Like, even if I got to a point where I wanted to be able to just, be able to bring it back in moderation, I've done my time, I'm good. And I don't need that shit anymore. It only caused me problems in the past anyways. And honestly, the only reason I used it, and this is what therapy helped me see, was because I used it to help with my confidence that was taken from me as a child, from my parents, and my lack of self-love, self-worth for myself, any feelings of feeling good enough, and took that. Okay, sorry, I kind of lost train of thought. Hold on. Oh yeah, so it was trying not to, or choosing that wasn't good. Oh, that 2 week period. Sorry, where I could have, but chose not to. Before I go start now with my next probation officer, who was going to start me on my next, because I had what they had given me was 4 years of probation, though I had to do. And so that was going to be monitored by, you go and give swab testing. In the beginning, actually, no, in the beginning, they were only doing twice a month. Well, it was like once a week, and then they brought it down to twice a month. And then once I got mold sickness, which that'll be a whole nother video, my body chemistry changed, and I had to start drinking more water, which was making the tests look like they were diluted, because their system is all messed up. And even though I was able to provide documentation about this, they were like, well, you can't overdrink water. And I'm like, but I have to. It's medically, I'm detoxing toxins out of my body, so I have to. And so because of that, I had to start doing, instead of urine tests, they were giving me saliva tests, which I had to go from 2 times a month now to once a week, and they became more expensive too. So basically it was a total of 6 years that I was, under monitored sobriety, that I could not drink even, and so you definitely, between all the, wanting to improve and be a better person myself on top of all that, but the time, you just get past it and you're over it. Like, you don't even you could go sit in a bar with people if you want, but it's kind of an icky environment now. You just understand it's just a bunch of low vibrational people with traumas. Always, obviously, not in the nice ones, but everything, I'm not generalizing everybody, but a large majority, the ones that you see drinking hard, like I used to. And so the reason I'm talking so in depth about this is because this was a very integral moment for me, and there was so much, and we're not even through. We're only like halfway through my timeline, people. As a chosen one, you got to remember, this is like novel upon novel, and I mean, I'm only covering like high level basic stuff. There's so much that was happening in between, and the fact that I can speak about this now with a little bit more clarity than I was able to back then, and being able to speak with it in forgiveness, and because I'm not a victim anymore. I'm a survivor from all this. So, and I'm thriving now. So I now know that it's time to speak about all this, to allow people to know that just because you've gone through things that society wants to deem as being bad doesn't make you a bad person. No, like, you are who you are. And I had to learn that I used these numbing agents to drowned out my pain of not being able to be myself, not being able to do what I wanted to do, having to compose my whole entire life to what my mom and my dad wanted it to look like. You know how painful that is, especially when you're a chosen one and you have a mission and you're not able to do that or be that. That's painful. And it made you kind of feel like I'm doing, especially when I had my corporate job where I was flying all over the world, which was fun for a while until it wasn't, and realized, ooh, this corporate thing is really taking my soul. It was fun until it wasn't. And then I realized, no, there's something more for me. And that was another reason I think back on the drinking is that, like, I know I drink because it was like I was bored, or like I was like feeling unfulfilled in my life, like that there was something bigger and better, but I didn't, I didn't know myself. So I didn't know how to even think about how to reaching it, how to get to reaching it. And this moment was, now we're coming up to, and I have done a video on this, but we're coming up to that beautiful moment after I'm, getting out of jail, finally just starting my 4-year probation, continuing my healing that I started for myself, for my own personal purposes, to better myself, to let go of that trauma so that I wouldn't accidentally trip into any mental illnesses that my family had to deal with, or physical illnesses that my family dealt with due to the heavy drinking, due to any drug use that they were all doing. Who knows? Definitely the gambling, bad eating, codependency, addictions, lots of addictions in the family, lots of mental illness in the family. And I was the generational trauma breaker. I knew this, that I needed to stop. I needed to learn how to that if I didn't fix in me what was never fixed, what my mom and dad never fixed in themselves, therefore unconsciously raising me in the way that they were raised. And that's how I was able to give forgiveness to them at that time period while I was in the healing, to say, like, they dealt with what I dealt with too, and probably worse. But little did I know when I said that actually there was so much more to this, and I will have videos on that specifically too. However, the understanding of this for people, because I know that there could be a lot of shame and guilt for people that maybe have had to deal with the law, the criminal justice system, with these scammers and them trying to make you feel like, no, like, I know I've always been a good person. You can ask any other person that's not a narcissistic karmic family member of mine. Any person would tell you that I'm always been a kind, loving, giving person. To giving. And so that's what I needed to see in myself, and that's where these next 2 years were just bliss. And again, I've mentioned this so many times, I was crying so hard every day and loving every minute of it, because I knew every tear was releasing old memories and I needed it out of me. And I was still at a place where I potentially was still thinking about having kids, but I said, if I can't fix in me what they didn't fix in themselves before having me and my brother and my sister, there is no way I'm going to put another child on this planet to have to deal with what I dealt with, because to me, that's selfish and it's abusive and it is reckless. So I knew that I was under the clock of trying to get that completed. Once I realized the state of our world too, it kind of made me a little freaked out to know that I don't maybe know if it is my mission to birth an actual human. Since I was somebody who chose to have an abortion with somebody, I now understand that actually happened for a very positive reason. So I am going to stop it right here for now because we are up to a good point. And I think I've pretty much covered everything I wanted to get through in that portion of it, because this now ends the time period where I was being extremely, where I was in extreme survival mode, being harassed, threatened, and just stalked and gang stalked in the nastiest way possible. And so, if any of you have any of your own stories that you'd like to share, I obviously would love to hear it, and it would help the collective, because that was one of the things that, as I was dealing with this all back then, is I could not find information that helped me to confirm that this is something that happens to more, like, that this isn't as unique of a thing that occurs, that this is actually happening to a lot of people, and more people that are even aware. And when I realized that, that's when I knew I wanted to be able to speak out on my experience in the beginning stages, because of people going missing in his court case. I'm not gonna lie, this is when I was still low vibrational and I hadn't risen high enough. I was scared that if I had spoke out about what I had experienced, that, something could have happened to me because of speaking out. And, now that I've gotten to a place where now I know how to handle this, I am now at a higher vibration than where those, MFs are, those karmics are. And that's really that's the thing. That's the most important part, is just learning the things to do for yourself and in your daily life, listening to solfeggio frequencies, listening to 528 hertz, 432 hertz, 417, so many, there's so many frequencies to listen to keep you in high vibration, positive affirmations, breath work, sound therapy, working with animals if you're an animal lover. And even if you're not, I highly recommend it. It is something that I will be speaking about so much more, because it is, well, we'll just say that at the moment. And so anyways, I know I'm kind of getting a little long on this one. I'd like to wrap this up by saying thank you so much to all of you who have listened. I'm going to get a little emotional because it feels really good to get this out finally. And I have been trying to figure out how to put this information out to be able to help others, because I always said if I could help one person with my story to be able to survive through, to get through, to rise above the gang stalking and the human trafficking and these karmics that are just trying to take us light workers down, I am happy if I can make just help one person in this. So I am, as always, sending you so much safety and protection. Know that my YouTube compartment is hard protected, always, and any video that you watch. And so you are safe and protected to not just watch it, but also comment if you feel called to. I do, I'm more than happy to receive constructive criticism. But for those of you that don't resonate with this, it just moved past. But for those of you that maybe I planted a seed to help you, I'm sending you so much love, so much gratitude, and thank you so much for watching.